Hello, Christine.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes. Before starting your session, I want to introduce you to our audience, Christine.
Thank you.
Dr. Christine is a counseling psychologist with over 25 years of experience specializing in resilience, positive psychology, and issues related to religion, spirituality, women, and diversity. She has delivered over 420 professional and community presentations across 20 countries and 17 US states, and has been widely published in international journals and professional publications. As a founder of 𝐑𝐞𝐧𝐞, she provides consultations, keynotes, and workshops to empower individuals and organizations through the science of character, strengths, and resilience. Christine also teaches at multiple colleges in New Jersey and serves as chair of the APA's Special Interest Group on Religious and Spiritual Issues in Counseling Psychology. Her global impact is grounded in a deep passion for education, empowerment, and helping others thrive. You have done really great job, Christine, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. I look forward to being here. I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully that will show easily. Oh, okay, I hope everybody can see that.
Yes, Christine, please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, so today I'm going to be talking to you about resilience, and as was kind of said during the introduction there, this is my kind of interest area, specialty area. I presented on resilience quite a bit over the last 25 years or so. And it's a really important topic because it helps us to understand how to lead organizations, but also how to transform when we've had challenges and difficulties. So as we go through this presentation, um, it is not advancing. I don't know why. Um, let me see here. Okay, just to let you know a little bit about myself. Um, Again, I've been in this field for about 25 years or so, and the slides are not advancing. I'm not quite sure what's happening. There we go. My master's and doctoral training is in resilience and positive psychology. I've presented on these topics over 420 times in 17 states, have collaborated with people in over 20 countries. And so I'm a therapist, I'm a resilience specialist, speaker, author, consultant, and leader. And the important things to know about the kind of company that I've started is what is positive psychology and why we should be studying this. And so when working, we talk a little bit about the history of positive psychology, why we tend to focus on strengths, as well as the core concepts of psychology and how to foster and enhance resilience in adults, children, groups, individuals, companies, whatever is needed in that regard. And so in working with my clients, I help them to find their internal strengths, find ways to harness those strengths, make them a little bit stronger, and to help them to grow those strengths as well. So I'm sure there have been times where we have all felt like this. We're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. Things are very difficult and challenging, but it doesn't have to feel like it's overbearing or that it's too difficult for us to handle these challenges. So think about the last few years of your life. I know in the last 5 years or so, we had a kind of universal difficulty through COVID, where we were quarantined and had to stay home. Businesses had to shift, education had to shift, our work had to shift. And so not just thinking about that time in COVID, but in any time in your life when it was difficult, where have there been those areas of difficulty, but where has there also been areas of growth? And oftentimes, if we focus on the two of those things together, we will learn about ourselves a little bit more and learn about our strengths and learn about how to adapt during those times as well. So it is not just a challenging, difficult time, but we can also figure out ways to grow and develop from that. So the science of positive psychology, which is what I have studied over the last 20 some years or so, and this has been the scientific study of optimal human functioning. So we are not denying that there are difficulties or there are challenges in the world, but the goal is to better understand how we can apply the factors of positive psychology to understand how we can thrive and also how our communities, our families, our companies, our businesses can thrive as well. So that is hopefully the purpose of what I'm going to work with you all today on. So again, it's not a naive worldview that there aren't wars and diseases and difficulties and things like that. We're not looking through rose-colored glasses, but instead we know that there is a focus and a balance between the positive and the negative emotions, and that when we study these pathological things, we can also study the balance of how things are impacted and how we can grow from those difficulties. So when I work with clients, we work on things like well-being, happiness, flow, personal strengths, wisdom, creativity, and today I'm going to focus on resilience. But the goal of all of this is to look at what science tells us about the positive mental health, thriving, prosperity, and faring well, free of mental illness, more on the mental wellness side, in the private and in the social realms and in the business sense. And as women, how we can kind of contribute to this even more. So this is what was going to be my focus today. Again, flourishing is about living optimally, experiencing the good things in our life. There's a ratio of kind of negative to positive experiences, but this holds true to our business, our work, and our relationships. And in the United States, we know that in our foundation, in our Declaration of Independence, in our Constitution, and just as globally as humans, we have a pursuit for happiness. And this can be kind of the measure for social progress. We can look at happiness as an emotion, but it's also much deeper than that in the sense that it is not dependent just on our circumstances, but we want to know what contributes to our happiness and how we can grow. We have found that there have been 5 essential elements of well-being, and these are related to happiness and joy and well-being in our careers, in our social well-being, in our financial, physical, and in our community. And we have found that 66% of people are doing well in at least one of these areas, but only 7% of people are doing well in all 5. So we want to understand what can hinder, but also what can enhance our well-being, and how can we create well-being in all 5 of those categories. So we have found that if we create more connection, if we're more active in our body and our mind, if we stop and slow down and savor positive experiences, if we are always and continually learning, you are doing that by being in this summit. If we are constantly giving to other people, and being altruistic, but also while taking care of ourselves, those tend to be the ingredients of resilience and well-being. If we have a balance between our spirituality, our physical health, our intellectual well-being, always engaging in deep learning and being open to experiences, if our relationships are healthy and we nurture and give love and receive love, we tend to be in greater well-being as well. And our emotional well-being is really important, where we can vitalize things like resilience, which we are talking about today. And if we are engaged in positive relationships, meaningful experiences, having a sense of accomplishment, all with positive emotions, we tend to do better as well. There are also some barriers to this, which is when we tend to lean on the negative end, we tend to find difficulties in that regard. We all tend to lean negative sometimes, and that helps us to kind of survive. We also don't want to do this too much because it won't help us to thrive. It'll only help us to survive. So it's an adaptive mechanism if we think about the negative, but it won't help us to thrive. We also sometimes have these affects where we look at the intensity of a situation and how it ended, not necessarily looking at the whole picture. Were there lessons that we could have learned if we look at the whole picture? We don't sometimes look at the whole picture. We just look at how a situation ended and appraise that as negatively or positively. And we look at the intensity of the experience. But if we evaluate all of it, we can learn a little bit more about what we can learn from that situation and how to apply it moving forward. Sometimes we also compare ourselves to other people, which should not be their goal. We are only comparing ourselves to ourselves. How are we compared to a year ago, or even a day ago, or even 5 minutes ago? Are we improving in that regard? And if so, we shouldn't again compare ourselves with others. The race is not the same, and it's like comparing apples and oranges. So today we're going to be talking, there's several different theories about positive psychology, strength theory, broaden and build, the undoing hypothesis, which I'll talk about real briefly, but mostly I want to talk about the resilience hypothesis. And so strengths are things that are kind of built in within us already. These are not just the let's fix it approach, but we also want to look at what makes us really, really strong. And if we focus on our strengths, they will help out our weaknesses. Imagine, for example, if you have a failure on a report card. Most people will focus on that failure and they won't focus on the other strengths that brought them good grades. Instead, if we focus on that, we can use those things to help us to deal with the failure. So if we don't focus on our strengths, we won't reach our top potential and we won't flourish and thrive. So we don't want to manage weaknesses. We want to lean more on our strengths. There have been found 24 character strengths universally that have been found in most individuals, if not all individuals, in a different order. And these strengths are grounded in the values that we hold as important as humans. And everybody has them, but they all have them in a different order. So that makes us all universally very much the same, but also very unique and different. And so leaning on your top strengths can help you to identify ways to grow in areas where you have difficulties or challenges. So strengths are not the same as talents. Talents are like I can play a sport really well, or I can play the piano really well. Those things are not necessarily grounded in morality. And if we don't practice them, we can actually waste that talent. But our strengths are grounded in morality. All of those skills are things that, again, we find universally to be important, and therefore they are rarely wasted because they're so important. They can be used across the different situations and times in our life, thus making them generalizable across time and situation, and they can help us contribute to the well-being of ourselves and others. These come from our positive emotions, come from our brains, from the prefrontal cortex, which helps us to generate goals and create pathways to achieve those goals. And the more that we achieve our goals and move towards progress, the more we feel we are able to kind of recognize our strengths and have those positive emotions and recognize them in others as well. There are also 10 positive emotions that have been identified that if we use these, they help us to undoing hypothesis, undo the negative experiences in our life, and to rebuild and broaden our horizons, and to be able to problem solve and to think in ways that can problem solve and expand our creativity and broaden our perspectives and our horizons. So using these 10 emotions has been universally beneficial as well. We always prepare for good times. We prepare for baby showers and weddings and graduations, but sometimes when there is a roadblock, we don't always have prepared for those things. So we have to maneuver those things to help us to move from situations where we are striving to situations where we are thriving, even if everything around us is not universally working or is even dry and arid. You can see this flower here is still growing even though the environment around it is not. And so research tells us we often can either succumb to difficult situations or survive and continue to function, sometimes with impairment, sometimes without, or we will recover and return to baseline. Sometimes we will thrive, and this is ultimately the goal of resilience, is how to thrive through a difficult situation. And these are, unique challenges sometimes that even women experience because women have a lot of roles that they fulfill. Research still tells us that women are still doing the majority of the child rearing and the homework in addition to the outside work that they have. So we are juggling quite a bit as women, and that can sometimes lead to burnout. So we don't want to get to a place where we are succumbing or just surviving and continuing to function. We really want to return to baseline after we've had these challenges and then thrive and continue to function as well. Resilience is not really a new concept. Philosophers, poets, um, all kinds of individuals have talked about it, but there is now about 50 years worth of scientific research that backs up this concept and tells us more about what it is, and again, how to apply it to leadership specifically is what I'm going to talk about today. Adversity is a very normal part of life. It does not mean that we are weak. Again, we all have these character strengths inside of us that tell us that we don't have to break when we are going through challenges. We can be resilient. So we've used this word quite a bit already. Let's discuss what it is. It is a broad word that has been used in across different arenas, but like I said, there's about 50 years of research now that tells us that this is about the upward spiral of well-being, allowing people to see the possibilities, to see the world more optimistically, to have coping skills, to play a bad hand well, and to have good emotions that buffer our negative emotions like depression or anxiety. Resilience can be quite complex, as this model that I published many years ago shows, because every experience is unique to us and how it impacts our thinking, our mind, our psyche, and every experience is unique. So, how it impacts us is unique, the experience is unique, and then we end up falling on a continuum of resilience. But resilience is not the absence of any difficulties. It is really the conscious choice to experience the full spectrum of our human emotions, to not be consumed by them, and to thrive in spite them. So it is my goal in my work to help people to scale those unscalable mountains, men, women, children, groups. But again, particularly as a woman myself, and as a person who does wear those many hats and many roles, I want people to see that the challenges that they're experiencing are not insurmountable. We can face adversity. We can wear many hats as parents, as career women, as business owners, as visionaries, and still come out of those situations thriving. There is a lovely practice out of Japan that shows that even when we are broken, we don't have to be discarded. We can repair that with gold, and therefore it becomes more strong, more beautiful, more valuable, even in the places that have been broken. And this is the kind of work that I do with my clients, which is helping them to manage and navigate life transitions. And as women go through those different transitions in their life, through initially through puberty, eventually through career, family, building a family, raising children, carrying children, eventually going through other hormonal changes towards the end and of their cycles, and then also as they age, how they can still become vibrant and resilient as well. So we want to be resilient in the physical realm, in the mental realm, in the social realm, in the spiritual realm. Where are our priorities? What makes us feel defeated at times? What makes us feel invigorated and motivated? And we should also lean on other people that can help us, spiritual and community leaders, family and mentors, and help us to think and feel and clearly do more clearly. In terms of the space of leadership, we are to create connections, to avoid seeing problems as insurmountable, to move towards goals, to take decisive actions, to look for opportunities of self-discovery, even in times of challenge, and yet to keep those challenges in perspective, and therefore to maintain a hopeful outlook. We can reflect on past experiences where we've had challenges, to challenge ourselves to use those experiences in our current stories, and to define a tailor-made plan based on our own personal history and many other factors that will help us to grow as well. To bolster self-esteem, to not run and hide from the problem like this guy's doing and stick our heads in the sand, pretending that there are no problems, but to actively face problems head on will help us to grow as well. The more good relationships that we have, I always tell my students and clients, good relationships lead to good mental health. Poor relationships obviously will lead to poor mental health because it puts a lot of stress on us. But good, secure relationships help us to have self-efficacy, mastery over difficulty, a solution to stress, and also resilience. We want to reframe our difficulties and our challenges, focus on being adaptive and flexible. We want to balance the many different areas of our life. We usually tend to focus on only one or two of these things in these circles, maybe financial or occupational, and forget things like our physical well-being or our social well-being, our spiritual well-being, or our environmental or emotional well-being. So balancing this is really important. We also don't want to hold our feelings in, but we want to identify our feelings and talk to people that are genuine and compassionate and continuous with us that can help us to solve those problems. We want to name our emotions, and our emotions can be quite complex like this. But if we can at least name these top 4 emotions when we're feeling them to the right people, we can feel an unburdening and a greater resilience in that regard. Again, we want to reframe our thinking from negative thoughts to positive ones. Sometimes we are unable to change our circumstances, so we want to change and challenge ourselves to grow and be flexible and to change how we think about a certain situation, even if we can't change it. Research also tells us that when we have gratitude, especially towards even the smallest things in our day, then that is mindfully noticing the good, and it shifts our perspective from negative to positive. When we're kind to others, it also shifts our perspective and it causes us to have greater kindness towards others. Again, we can apply our own story of resilience from the past to the present, apply these 10 positive emotions we talked about. We also want to slow down and savor. Research tells us that we can savor our experiences and bank them in our mental bank and withdraw from them when experiences are negative in order to come to a more positive experience. We want to accept the situation, solve problems as they come, deal with anger appropriately, and journal, do some art, talk to a counselor or a clergy person to help us, and to count to 3 before reacting. So these are all the summary of the things that we've talked about that can build our resilience. Let me talk about women real quick. We want to be more flexible, be prepared, but also be flexible, have goal-oriented, be more in terms of recovery-oriented models. In terms of women, we have an advantage because we are able to be flexible and adaptable. We have great self-awareness. We build social connections and can manage stress well. We tend to have a greater positive mindset, greater emotional intelligence, and growth mindset. Again, we are support seeking from other people and build connections. We can manage stress really well, and we can be authentic and genuine. And those things are strengths that women have that can help us as leaders and in our families and in our business and career. We want to create short-term and long-term goals and not to be worried when the winds blow because we are deeply rooted. And when the wind blows, the roots stretch, we grow stronger, and therefore we are able to reset in our spirit and become more resilient. So I encourage you all to become calm and to stay resilient. You can reach me at those top QR codes or through my WhatsApp, which is in that green. The right-hand corner is how you can reach me through my website or through email. Yes, positive emotions. It looks like there's some questions in the chat. Positive emotions can certainly help us to expand how we problem solve. And therefore, when we are able to problem solve a little bit better and we have a different perspective, that can help us to solve problems as well. And diversity can help us be more resilient in our leadership as well as can connect us with people with varying opinions, varying structures, and that can expand all those strengths as well and can help us to cope and help us to grow as women. Feel free to reach out if you need to communicate some more about resilience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Thank you for your valuable time. We have a question from our audience. How do
Sure.
religion and spirituality intersect with the resilience, especially for women leaders?
The first two, what are the two things that intersect?
Religion and spirituality.
Yes, absolutely. We have found through research that religion and spirituality give people a concept of hope, and hope in the religious and spiritual world is that things can get better. From the psychological world, you put some action into that and you have progress. It also helps us to rely on community, because oftentimes religious and spiritual people have a community, and also on a higher power, that I'm not alone to struggle through the things that we struggle through. So religion and spirituality is indeed incredibly important. It expands our world and makes it larger than ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you so much for answering. It's a great session, Kristen. And
Thank you so
thank you
much.
for
Looking
your
forward to
valuable
connecting
time.
with some of you.
Yeah, we are very honored. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so
Be on
much.
the backstage and join the next session, please.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye-bye.